you know, when the hiring manager just makes a decision to hire, they kind of give you a salary range. They give the recruiter a salary range, and then they say to the recruiter, okay, you close the deal. You take care of that. They don't want to get too involved in negotiations, even at the highest levels. And
Mm.
so, although I wasn't really the type of person who naturally negotiated, I had to learn it because I was forced to, because it was part of the job. So anyway, nobody seems to own the problem of learning negotiation coaching. Now, my background is I've coached over 10,000 people. I was a high-tech headhunter for 20 years. I've worked in both Fortune 500s and about 10 startups, including a venture capital incubator. And my clients have included C-suites and venture capitalists. And I also have a master's degree in values, which we're going to get to at the end of this presentation. Some of the clients that I've served are here listed, so you can see I have worked with quite a lot of people over at L'Oreal and Nokia and Oracle, and some at Raytheon also, which is sort of in your neck of the woods. But anyway, these are a few of my clients. So let's get started. What is the art of negotiating? Do you know what the key tools are? Well, here I've listed a few of the key tools. And this is really not in a book. I'm sorry to say there's not a book on this, although I will recommend a book. I do have two books to recommend, but this is really just based on my years of experience working with people. And I found that if you can frame the argument correctly, and especially if you frame the argument early before anybody else even thinks about making the argument, you will often win the argument.
Mm.
So we're going to get to that. I have an example of that in a minute. Another tool for negotiating is shared values. When you can figure out what the true values are of the company leaders, both individually and for the corporation, then you can negotiate around those values. Another negotiating tool is styles. In other words, what style does the person you're negotiating with prefer? We're going to get into that in a minute. Another tool is subtle diminishment, which is often overlooked, but almost always used by the C-suites.
Mm.
Um, they use it on us. And I teach people to use it on them, use it back at you. Okay. The element of timing is very important. Endorsements are critical. A lot of people don't realize that they need to get endorsements from their peers, even though the peer might not really be directly involved in the project. And then another tool is quid pro quo. And then the last tool I have is 10 closing approaches, which we'll go over. Okay. So what are the trends in the industry right now? The trends are that, well, Korn Ferry predicts a total reinvention of the business model with the people at the heart of everything, because we're going through the great resignation. Employees are starting to leave their jobs and wondering, what are they working for? And Korn Ferry has concluded that we're going to need a more people-focused approach to management. And we have to shift from me to we, and that means we have to learn to negotiate better. So this is for you if you're tired of pitching to deaf ears and have low visibility and weak endorsements, and you want to launch some new ideas, gain support, and bring in changes. So let's take the first tool, and that is framing the argument correctly. So the first step in framing the argument, which almost everyone I work with, and I work with a lot of VPs, is they forget to talk about why should you care? And that's the first step. So for example, I was working with a very, very, very senior AI guy at a major well-known startup company that's $1 billion now. And he had done a lot for the company, but he couldn't get anyone to care about what he was doing. So we spent all our time translating everything he was doing into why should they care? What was in it for them? And bringing it down from the abstract to the ground level of the product. And when he started making this change, everything changed. He said people were starting to listen to him, and he was going for interviews, and he was getting a lot further in the interview process, and they were really taking him seriously. So the second part of this tool is to identify the options. Like I recommend 3 options, A, B, and C, and review the pros and cons of A, B, and C, all 3 of them, and then recommend one of the options, and then state the consequences if they are leaning toward the wrong option, and then state the benefits if they take the best option. And I'm going to give you a case study on this. It's very effective. And then assume that they accept, but make a strong closing statement at the end. Something like, well, when we adopt this option A, here's what's going to happen. You know, you do an assumptive closing statement at the end. And that usually works. Okay, the other thing you can do is make sure that you're presenting your arguments based on shared values. In other words, I mean, and there's like a bazillion different values that you could talk about, but here's a few, like innovation versus status quo. If you're an innovative person, but you're talking to somebody who's holding down the status quo, don't talk about innovation, talk about the status quo. If you're more interested in beauty and the person you're talking to is more interested in efficiency, then don't emphasize the aesthetics or the beauty of the thing. Look at the efficiency of it and argue from that foundation. If you are more customer oriented, but you're talking to the engineering department, you've got to shift your argument over to the engineering argument and their needs. So that's an example of getting on the same page. Now, styles of engagement, these are 4 typical styles. Persuasive is a common style that's used by sales and marketing people. Analytic style is used by finance and engineering people. The consensus style is often used by customer success, customer support people, or by operations people. the bottom line is always used by the C-suite, and they want you to get to the bottom line. So you don't go into a 20-minute argument. You go into a 5-sentence argument with the bottom line in the first sentence. Like, if you want to double revenues, here's what we do. Okay. So, subtle diminishment. Now, this is one that all the C-suites use all the time, and we don't even realize it. And I'm trying to advocate that the rest of us get on the same page here and start using it too. And it's really based on anything that hasn't worked, like the history of something, the costs of something, the high turnover, the short-sightedness of something, cutting corners, whatever it is. You have to, it does take a lot of intellectual work though to figure this out. But I can help you. You know, this is what I do with people. I help them figure out what are the shortcomings that they're not thinking about and that you need to bring up to the surface and point out. So in this approach, you minimize all the other options and all the other tactics by pointing out what hasn't worked or what probably won't work. And you explain the cost of not doing it the way you're recommending. And you could also cite past failures. And it doesn't have to be logical, but you do have to diminish something. It's kind of an emotional approach, basically. All right, now the element of timing is critical. So the question is, when do I present a new strategy, program, or solution? Or when do you do this? Well, the most obvious times are, you know, after you've had a good performance review, or you've gotten endorsements, or you've opened up a new market, or you've made some kind of contribution. But the other side of this is you want to look at what's going on with the person you're presenting to. In other words, did they just go through a budget cut? Did they just have, did they lose a customer? Do they have some problems with the engineering department? Do they have high turnover? You've got to look at their side of the street also and figure out, are they in a good space? Are they in a good mood to receive a request? So you've got to look at both sides. Okay, endorsements. Now this is another technique that is very much underused, but I noticed in my corporate career that people who got endorsements, not just from the people over their head, but also the peers, they were more likely to get approval for something. And the reason, I began to realize there's a good reason for this. The reason is, even if, you know, the program was way off the mark of what you thought should be, you know, is needed, oftentimes people who get a lot of endorsements will still get approval for a wacky program. And they might even get a budget for it too. And the reason is companies like to have a good sense of community, and they will reward people that have a lot of support. It's kind of a support for building community, so to speak. So, I mean, I've seen some really wacky programs get endorsed. We had, when I was at Netscape, one of the HR guys got approval to have, the two engineering teams were fighting. You might have heard about it. They were fighting like crazy. And so he had a balloon contest, and they all went up to the roof and they threw balloons down to the ground. And I forget, there was a big contest. Who could break the most balloons? Who could throw the most balloons? I don't know what it was, but it was so wacky. Anyway, they endorsed it, and they endorsed about 20 programs like this to try to get the two teams to work together. Anyway, the main thing is to get as many people on board as possible, even if they're not remotely interested in the project. And make sure that this person over your head knows that you've got wide endorsement on this thing. And you sure want to include the CFO in this if you want to get a budget for it. All right, quid pro quo. Now this, by the way, is another technique that is not discussed, but is very common and I think is critical for getting endorsements and critical for getting your project accepted. Well, what is quid pro quo? It's a this for that. It's where you offer a favor in return for something. So an example is you offer to bring in a new client or introduce a new possible client to the senior VP. And the exchange would be that they would give you something in exchange. You have to really kind of, this again takes a lot of thought and preparation, but you figure out what they need that you can give them. And then after that, you also make a request. And you could do it both at the same time. But you don't want to exactly say, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. You don't want to be that overt. But if you offer to introduce the senior VP to a high profile person at a company that they want to, recruit, they will always entertain an offer, a request from you in return. So you don't want to do this on the fly. You want to really think it through and figure out what is the exchange going to be. And this is a technique that really gets you what you want, and it leads to advancement. Now we're going to go on and talk about 10 closing approaches. And here's just 10. There's like a book of 29 of them. But anyway, they are the tugboat close, the padlock close, the silent close, subject to close, dumb mistake close, final objection, minor point, positive assumption, return serve, and alternate choice. And I'm just going to explain 3 of them. However, if you would like a 3-page summary of these closes, send me an email and I will send that out to you. Okay, so the tugboat close is where you ask for a little bit at a time. In other words, you might ask for a broader range of responsibilities, and then a few days later you might say, oh, since I've got a bigger role now, let's make the title, let's improve the title, make it a better, instead of manager, director, or instead of director, senior director, to go with the broader role. And then after that, you could ask for more money. So that's the tugboat. You don't ask for everything at once. You kind of ease into it. And it might be a few days or it might be a few weeks. The padlock closes, you don't really force them to change their mind, but you tell a story to distract them and revisit the issue from another point of view. And the silent close is where you make your request and then you stop talking, because the first one to talk loses. They will either say yes, no, or maybe, but you wait to find out. Don't say anything until they answer. So here's an example. You could say, as you know, I've been actively interviewing with a few other companies, and I've discovered that the market rate, the going rate that they see me at, is 240 to 280 base salary. And then you stop talking. Now, if they don't say anything for, wait a while, like a minute, or if they're inflexible, then you say, well, this company is really great and it's a good fit for me, so I want to find a win-win solution. What could that be? And be quiet and wait. And then, of course, they probably won't come up with anything. So then you can say, well, how about a larger bonus? How about 5 more direct reports? How about a salary adjustment? How about bringing me on the executive committee? Or how about realigning my role to be VP? So that's an example of the silent close. Okay, so now I want to talk about
Sorry, Julie, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there was a comment that in the chat about the padlock close that some people didn't understand. Would you mind saying more words about that?
Sure. Okay. Okay, I didn't explain that. Well, that one is let's say they say a hard no. You say, well, okay, here's an example. You say, I think we ought to beef up our customer success department because a lot of customers are frustrated with the way it's, they don't understand our product. And I think we have to have a better help desk and a better customer relations program. And let's say they just say, no, no way, we're not doing that. Then what you can do is you can say, well, you can give an example of another company that did this and what the success was. You could say, for example, well, ABC company has organized their customer success program to do A, B, C, D, and E. So when they bring on a new customer, they have a complete training program, then they have a support program, then they do this, then they do that, and they have a 90% retention rate. We have a 50% retention rate. And let them think about it. And then you don't have to get a yes right there, but you could come back to the topic 3 days later.
So is
Okay.
the idea that the reason why it's called a padlock is because they've already shut it down? So
Yeah.
you're just putting
Yeah.
something out there to open it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got
You're
it.
trying to get them to open up their thinking. And
Thank you.
you're giving a real example of what, to tell a company everybody else is doing it, that is very persuasive. I have used that. Well, I have said to people, everybody else is doing it. We're the only company not doing this. And suddenly about a week later, they go, okay, let's do it. That's what I call peer pressure closes. Actually, that should be on the list. It's not even on the list. That's my favorite close. I got a VP of marketing to, my department said, get her to start doing going through the process. She's skipping all the paperwork. We have to get her to do the paperwork to hire. So I finally said to her, well, you're one of the few departments that's not following the process. And she was so embarrassed. She said, okay, I'll do it. Okay, anyway, let's go to examples here. I've got 6 examples. I'm not going to go over all of them, but the first one is reframing. I had a client who was an engineering manager over QA, and he was really not respected at the company. Everybody was blaming him for everything. And we worked very hard at reframing the problem to show how much of an impact his changes were having on productivity and growth. And as a result of the reframing, he was promoted within about 3 months to a director. And it was very successful. Another one was shared values. I was working with a director of a department at a university who was having a conflict with her boss, who did something that she really didn't like and did not respect. He hired somebody that was his girlfriend. He hired his girlfriend or something like that, or he converted an employee into his girlfriend, something like that. Anyway, suddenly they were fighting like cats and dogs. She wanted to quit, and we did a whole process of evaluating his needs and his values and her needs and her values, and also looking at their styles of engagement. He was more of a builder and she was more of a banker, I think. And by sorting all that out, she was able to go back and talk to him in a way that worked for both of them. And she ended up staying. And it was a very good job. It would have been a shame to leave. Anyway, then the last, oops, sorry. I had a client who, through endorsements, was able to advance to a vice president. And that was, he was at Lockheed actually. And he had been acquired, and he came in at a low salary, very low, way too low. And so through endorsements and a few other arguments, he got his salary doubled. It was quite a surprise, and he was still under market, but through the endorsements, he was able to get his salary to double, and he was made a VP. Okay. Now this is my favorite story. I was working with the VP of IT at Walmart, and they recently acquired like about 150 to 200 small retail stores, dollar mom and pop stores. And all of these stores had different policies about what cell phones, what mobile device they were using. And this is at a time when you could walk down the aisle and use your mobile device to get updated advertisements and, discounts. So it was a critical factor. The critical problem was, what device was the whole company going to go to? Were they going to go to iPhones or Androids or something else? And my client was in favor of using the iPhone. So together we built up 3 arguments. One was to use the Android, another was the iPhone, and another was to let everybody do whatever they wanted. And by crafting the arguments properly, with the pros and cons really spelled out clearly, He was able to go to the CIO before anyone else even brought up the problem, and he could see it was going to be a big problem. And he convinced the CIO to adopt his favored solution. And that's what they did. And but it wasn't just that he got them to do what he felt was the right thing. It was also that his status went up because he was very proactive and he was a thought leader on that issue. Okay, I'm going to skip the second one. The third one's, okay, now this is really a doozy. Oops. I had a client who was a senior VP at Hewlett Packard, and she was in an argument with the CFO over there. And what I discovered was, I mean, clearly the CFO was a banker type. He was analytic and data-based kind of guy, totally. And she was a innovative merchant type. She was a brainstorming type. And they would get into meetings and they would just talk right across each other. They weren't even connecting. And so by explaining how to reorganize her style of engagement to be analytic and data-based, I was able to explain to her how she could rebuild their relationship. And that was effective. Now, here's some really good tips from the Oakland A's about what not to do and what to do. So, and I brought this up because it's surprising there are quite a few people who do these things. And so you don't want to play hardball. And hardball is something that you do where you make a threat. And you don't want to threaten to go somewhere else or sue them or something like that. That's hardball. You can do that at the very, very, very end of your negotiation, but not at the beginning or in the middle. And I don't recommend it at all, frankly. You also don't want to play the victim card. So when they make a concession, you should acknowledge it. And you don't really want to blame the other party. It's not considered good form. But what you do want to do is give numbers. So if they offered 250, you say, well, I'm looking at 450 with a 20%, or 400 with 25%, or 350 with 3%. You know, you want to get into a numbers battle. Realize that the more you're demanding, the longer the process could be. And it might take 3 or 4 weeks or 3 or 4 months, especially if you're negotiating for a lot more than they wanted to give. It could take longer because they have to go through their budget, the CFO gets involved, and so on. And you want to outline your steps to get to the end and be nice and get along. I think this is a good outline. I'm glad I brought it in. So the benefits of learning how to negotiate are that it helps you stay on top of what's happening. It opens up doors for you, and it leads you into a position of influence. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about values. And this is really, I have a master's in value conflicts, and so I brought this in because there is a method for establishing your leadership based on values. And if understanding values that people hold helps you avoid potholes and conflicts, It leads to more success in your negotiations, and it leads to a better chance of being seen. Here's some examples of value conflicts. So, for example, and this could be between departments. Like, for example, one department might have a short-term focus, like sales might be very short-term focused, but engineering might be long-term focused. Or it could be between individuals, or it could be between executives. Like the CEO, the chief operating officer is usually going to have a short-term focus. But the VP of strategy is going to have a long-term focus.
I'm sorry, Julie, I'm just going to interrupt just briefly.
Sure.
To let you know that we're at 2:41 and we have a little bit of in-house business that we have to handle. So I wanna flag for you that you should take up maybe about another 7 or 8 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll be done. I'll be
Okay.
done now. Okay. All right. So anyway, you can see there's a lot of different conflict issues around values. And it's important to resolve these conflicts. So I have in my coaching program, I do have ways of helping people resolve conflicts between information-based people and motivation-based people, between builders who are oriented toward power and control and collaborators, and between people who are transparent and people who are more image-oriented. So, when you master the values-based leadership style, you will discover who values what and uncover the values of the people that are managing you, find out what the hidden issues are, and be able to use your skills better. And you can potentially become the company mediator. And once you master the art of negotiation, then you can be perceived in a new light. Oops, wait a minute. And regarded as an expert and gain prestige and increase your morale. So these techniques could be for you if you want to create more impact, improve your credibility, or strengthen your role. And if you want to learn more about them, just call me or email me at this email. And if you want the list of the closing techniques, email me at this email, julie@bestexecutives.com, and we can talk, and I'll send you that list. And by the way, there's 2 books. One is called Negotiating Genius, which is by Deepak Malhotra. He is recommended by the Harvard Business School. And then there's The Secrets of Power Salary Negotiations, which is on the sheet that I'll send you. And that has 29, how many? I think it has, I don't know. It has actually 50 different closing techniques. Yeah. So, let's see. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Sorry I wasn't there at the beginning to introduce you, but we really, really appreciate it. This was very insightful. Tamara, I don't know if we can give 5 minutes to answer a couple of questions in the chat, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So Julie, there was Wendy, you had a couple of questions about endorsements. Did those get covered or did you still have that question? Wendy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I just had to unmute myself. No, I'm still curious about what you actually mean by endorsements. Like, would you just go to your peers and say, will you tell my boss that I did a good job on this? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
No. Let's see. I want to stop sharing my screen. Did I stop sharing
You
my
did
screen?
stop.
You
Okay.
did, we're good.
Okay, good. No, and it's a very informal, casual kind of thing where you go to the person in the office next door and you just say, oh, did you know I'm doing this class for this group over across town next week, and they're really excited, and I'm hoping that it'll lead to this and that. And, you just kind of tell a personal journey story to your peers about what you're doing. And by the way, you should be doing this every week anyway, because if they don't really know what you're doing, they will not support you being promoted. And if you want to be promoted, they need to know why you're, they need to know. And so every week or every once a month, I would just have a little 5-minute catch up chat with each one of your peers to say, oh, I'm doing this. What are you doing? It's kind of like, your friends and your neighbors, and you're just sharing what's happening, that type of thing. And just get them to be enthusiastic. Like, they don't have to go to the boss and say, oh, I think this is great. Although it would be good if maybe, 1 out of 10 might do that, or 1 out of 7 might actually comment to the boss that this seems like a great program and they're glad you're doing it, but your main motivation is, sometimes there's jealousy can really be a tremendous damper on people. And sometimes if somebody's going off and doing something exciting, other people can become jealous of you. And so rather than have them be jealous and feel left out and not knowing what's going on, it's better for you to kind of fill them in on what's happening.
I can actually give an example of endorsement that happened this week. One of my colleagues who wanted to go to Paris with me to this conference that's coming up in September was telling me about all the benefits of him coming and what he was going to accomplish and all that stuff, and essentially like took me out to lunch and told me all the reasons why he should go. And in effect, he was doing that so that I would endorse him attending, because him attending would benefit me in some way. So then I would go to our executives and say, hi, I highly recommend so-and-so attend as well, because they're going to go do all these things. And in effect, he was very effective, because when I went and talked to our team, I found out, oh, we have an extra registration anyway. It's not going to cost us anything. So success, he's going to get to go. So that's just like one example of somebody going and getting endorsements from their peers in order to advance themselves in whatever they're trying to do. His example was he really wanted to go to this conference with me in Paris to, increase his industry knowledge and connections and whatnot, and help the team in that manner. But I'm going to go with one more question from the chat, which was on styles of engagement. Sarah, are you still online? Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I was just hoping to see that slide again. I found it really interesting how you distinguish between different styles. I haven't heard those terms before, the banker, merchant, etc. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, would deferring to a different, somebody else's style of engagement, as soon as I identify that, how much of that compromises personal values? So if you don't personally value aesthetics, you don't think that should be the driving force in deciding program approaches, why would you sell that as a reason in your negotiation?
I'm not sure I followed the question, but
Sure,
I
I can
could
try to
kind of,
elaborate. Go ahead.
okay. When
I,
it sounds like you're worried about ignoring your true values if you structure your presentation according to their values. And it's a both and. You can maintain, let's say it's around aesthetics, and you have I do too. I have a real high value for beauty and aesthetics. And let's say the person you're talking to doesn't have a high value for that. They value numbers and, volume. Then if I'm trying to get them to endorse my idea, I don't need to emphasize the aesthetics. I just need to emphasize numbers for them. It doesn't mean my project won't be aesthetically pleasing. Of course, my project will be aesthetically pleasing because I need that. And it's a high value for me. But to get them to endorse it, I'm not going to highlight that. I'm going to highlight the numbers. Does that
I,
make sense?
I see. So like finding elements of all engagement styles in the objective project or whatever the objective
Yeah.
ask. Got it. Thank you. Would we be able to email you for access to these slides? I'd like to review them and mull over them.
That I don't know. I think I'm
Okay.
going to have to consider that, but you
No
certainly can
worries.
get a copy of the closing tools.
Got it.
So speaking of which, Julie, I just want to double check. We are in fact recording this. Do you have an objection of us broadcasting this particular presentation?
No, not at all. That would be great.
Okay, excellent. It's 2:52 and we do have a little bit of internal business. So I am going to, first of all, thank Julie because holy cow, this was amazing. This was a fantastic presentation. I'm super grateful that you're willing to let us have it and share it because I feel like I should memorize it. It was such a great amount of really good, thoughtful information, and you made it seem very easy to understand. I feel like, oh yeah, of course. I didn't know any of this before 2 o'clock, and now I feel like, I should have known that all along. That's how easy you made it feel. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Nagar, and the rest of the Elevating Women Working Group for arranging for us to have this opportunity with Julie. So I want to say thank you to all of you.
Just one thing before we move on. I put your Road Spring email address in here, and I saw at the end of the presentation you were using another one. Did you want everyone to use that, or is Road Springs okay?
That's either one works. They both come to me at either julie@bestexecutives.com or julie@roadspring.com. Either one is fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't giving the wrong email address out. Okay, thanks for repeating that in the chat, Tamara. Okay, that's it. So thank you very much. And just for full disclosure, I'm working with Julie myself, and I've loved the journey, and she's really been helpful for me as well in my career progression. So I'd highly recommend it. As you can see, she has a lot of insights that are really easy to grasp and engage and use all the time. So Julie, you're welcome to stay on, but we just have some business for our SSPI-WISE team to close on in the next 5 minutes. So welcome to stay and maybe take some more questions at the end if we have time, or sign off if you need to.
Well, I think I'll sign off then. It was great meeting you guys, and feel free to reach out, and I hope we can talk again.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, everyone, I'm going to say thank you. We're at 2:55, and I'm not going to belabor things too long. What am I doing wrong? Let's see. Okay, I'm not going to belabor things too long, but we do have a little bit of outstanding business, which is super important. And also, before I jump right ahead, I want to say welcome to our fearless and wonderful and beautiful Deborah Factor, Chair of SSPI-WISE. Hi, Deborah.
It was a great session. Thank you, Nagar and Tamara, pulling it together, and really the whole elevating women and all of the activities that are going on. These sessions I think are fabulous, just as giving some professional tips, and Nagar, certainly for sharing your own coach. She's got some really good thoughts, and for sure that could have been like a half day to keep going on. We all need good negotiation tips, whether it's in any part of your work life, or frankly in your personal life. These skills are life skills. So thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So the outstanding issue is, of course, you guys remember that we had an election last month. And I'm very grateful for everyone who participated. I'm grateful also for all the women who stepped forward to be of service. While the election was in process, we realized that we were going to need to make an adjustment in the networking working group. So Manal Tadros has been advanced as being one of the leads for the networking working group, which gives us an opportunity to do something that we hope we'll be doing more of, which is to elevate Kirsten Roost to emeritus status within that group, so that the knowledge that has existed within that group is not lost, because as you all know, we also elected to move Jennifer to being the lead for our new working group, which is the Sustainment and Infrastructure working group. So because that was not on the ballot, I'm going to ask everyone if they will now take a brief moment. I'm going to launch a poll right here in this space and give everybody an opportunity to react to two questions. The question number one is, shall we approve Manal Tadros to be one of the leads for the networking working group? And question number two, shall we elevate Kirsten Roost to be emeritus lead for the networking working group? So you're going to see this on your screen, and I'm going to ask everybody to react.
Do you need a certain number of positive votes to move forward?
We are right there. I've got 69% approved. So yeah, this is like super duper non-scientific. We just need everybody to be really aware and have some sort of official mechanism to do it. So so we are here. I've got 25 people and 23 respondents, and I think that that's more than likely because some people don't have access to the poll. I don't actually have access to the poll. So with that, I'm going to end the poll and share our results and say congratulations to all of our new leads, including now Manal. So.
Hi, everybody. This is Manel. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think we have a great mix of continuity as well as new and fresh ideas amongst our networking co-chairs. I'm really looking forward to collaborating with you all this year, and thanks again for the opportunity.
I'm very excited that you had that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manal. Hey, I got one more super duper extra important announcement that I just found out today, which is that Euroconsult, which is hosting their annual World Space Business Week in Paris in September, is extending a special offer and opportunity to women to have a discounted conference registration. If you're not already registered, there's going to be an email that I will be sending out probably tomorrow morning to extend this offer. Their goal is our goal, right? So their goal is to encourage women to come into a space that is, generally speaking, very high VIP status, but not enough women show up in that space. And so they're hoping by this means to promote it. I am going to also ask Elevating Women to be very proactive in reaching out to specific women. If you know of specific women who should be aware of this opportunity, and encouraging them to take advantage of it. As we all know, this Euroconsult thing is super expensive, so the discount is not going to make it stop being super expensive, but it'll be slightly less super expensive. So,
Can I
I
say,
was-
sorry, go ahead, Deb.
Oh, sorry. So, to Manal, I think on the breakfast idea, I do have that action underway to see if we can use an Airbus room and either on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I hope to have that confirmed end of next week. I am aiming for, just so you know, I'm aiming for the Wednesday, but they're just trying to make it work. So the answer will be yes, we can do a breakfast either in the Airbus room or a different room. And my guy is working with the hotel on that.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate the update.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, so I
I
guess just a broader announcement for everybody, just like we wanted to try to do a breakfast last December, and we had a really good response, and it all fell apart at the end due to our favorite COVID words. So what Deborah and I are talking about right now is we're planning to do another breakfast at World Satellite Business Week in September. So stay tuned for more information.
Just one suggestion on that. Due to COVID, would it might make sense to do it outdoors instead of in the meeting rooms? Unless your meeting room has a window and stuff, maybe that's okay. A lot of those meeting rooms do in that venue, but
I have no idea, and I have no idea. I will find out. I have no idea about an outdoor venue that could be used. Are you talking about like in the middle, in the fake outdoor, you know, that outdoor sort of thing?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can ask what their setup is and what that takes. And maybe I know Maria from Euroconsult is on. I don't know who controls that space in the middle. And during that time of day. It's a good question, Gar. I'll ask.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. And then just I know we're 3 minutes over. I'm going to make this quick. Just a suggestion for another way to elevate women is for us to look at, you know, raising some money for sponsoring women to attend some of these high visibility events like World Satellite Business Week and others through offering scholarships if their companies don't sponsor them to go. Like maybe we don't cover all the costs, but some of the costs for these more expensive events is something we can maybe do in the future. I think that would be good because giving those women at lower levels networking opportunities with the higher level people attending these events would be good for their kind of career progression, I think. But
thank you for that suggestion, Nagar.
Great idea.
We have a new working group called Sustainment and Infrastructure. And one of the things that we want to look at is how do we actually accomplish some of the things that we as SSPI-WISE want to be doing, like sponsorships and, you know, STEM outreach is going to also want sponsorships for incoming young women. And so this will be something that we'll be taking a good look at and think about how to build that structure for ourselves so that we create those opportunities.
Yeah, like we could run events and, you know, have people pay to attend the events, and then whatever proceeds we make from those events would be used to sponsor 1 or 2 people going to particular conferences. I mean, there's different ways of doing this, but I'm going to stop so we can end the meeting.
Okay, Deborah, do you want to tell us we can go home now? Or you're on mute.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
telling us we
Thanks
can't
for that
hear you.
little bit of business in the end, and really again, super event. I'm glad we can host it and that there's so much interest, and that Julie will let us share. That's very, maybe not the slides, although I suppose you see the slides when you listen. And congratulations to everybody on those who are the working group leads and the teams set up, and those who have served and will continue to serve. So really appreciate it, and wishing everybody a good rest of the day. Good weekend.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.